All right, everybody, here we are at another Marauder Mondays. I want to make sure that you can hear me and see everything just fine. So if you can, make sure you put it in the chat right now and give me a heads up that we're looking good, sounding good, and that we're ready to roll. So there's a lot to talk about, and it just feels like we are in a serious state of disaster right now. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about tonight, because there are natural disasters occurring around the country right now. But at the same time, we're also having other disasters that are affecting our population as a whole. And this is a serious situation that we can't always prepare for, but we can react to it in a way that might be more productive. Okay. So looking at the chat right now, I'm seeing 5x5. So everything's sounding good. I appreciate it. Mark Bottoms, do I need some sleep? Yeah, I do, actually. I had to get up really early today, and oh well, it's just part of the deal. I try to, train myself to live without copious amounts of sleep just in case. You never know when you're going to have to do a lot of night missions or whatever you want to call it, okay? All right, so sounds good. I appreciate you guys being here. Thank you so much for showing up here on every Monday, every week so far. It's been really awesome being able to hang out with everybody and discuss what's happening in the sense of preparedness. And I do appreciate all the support, because it really does make a difference. And it's very motivating to get back on here every single Monday and just make it happen. Okay. So first and foremost, if you are in the chat right now and you are being affected by Hurricane Ida, then please leave it in the chat. Let us know how you're doing. Give us an update on your situation or your conditions in your area, and let us know if there's anybody nearby that might be able to provide any assistance or anything like that, or if there's anything that you're in need of, or even if it's just information you're looking for in the sense of how you could react to some of the situations you might be dealing with right now. So just want to make sure that I put that out there, because this is definitely something that we can utilize to our benefit. These forums, these public forums that we're basically hosting in these live streams, are a good opportunity for people to network and even ask for help or assistance at times if need be, because people might be nearby or might be of the means to be able to reach out and do something additional that somebody else might not be able to do. So utilize this network in this community, especially if you're being affected by the disasters that are occurring right now. And like I said, there's more than just Hurricane Ida. There's a lot of other things happening that are really difficult for people to get on top of right now. So want to make sure that we are good to go. I want to say hello to a couple people really quick here. Let's see. Jeffrey Starnes, hello. Good to see you. Let's see. I've got Corporal America Preparedness. Good to see you here as well. Night of the Living Prepper. Excellent, genre of movies. Actually hasn't been written or directed yet, but I can already tell it'll be excellent. So, and let's see. Jairais here. Good to see you. Mason Alred. Thank you all so much. Really appreciate it. And we're going to keep this thing rolling for about an hour tonight to have a good time. Titan Preparedness channel. Good to see you as well. Definitely somebody that likes to have a alternate opinion on many of the videos that I put out, which I actually appreciate. Look, criticism or having a different point of view or perspective on things is actually very important to being prepared, so that we can have better ideas and being open-minded to alternate concepts to what it is that we're trying to do. So always bring it to the table. Never be afraid to. I always appreciate it. Okay. And let's see. V Preps here. Russ Reams here. Freedom Stands Tactical is here. Thank you all so much. So let's start talking about what's happening right now. Okay. There's major disasters that are going on within the country, and they're in different forms. Okay. There are natural disasters occurring, and there are also, I guess you could even call it societal disasters occurring. And that's something that we need to be on top of as well, because it's affecting the people of this country in a way that's going to lead us down different paths. Whether or not they're positive or negative is something we're going to find out here very soon, unfortunately. So first and foremost, Hurricane Ida, obviously a very powerful storm, very well forecasted in many ways for where it was going to make landfall and where it was going to affect, or what region it was going to affect the most. So at least we can say that the meteorologists were on top of this one and giving people the best information they could. I will at least, try to give them kudos when I can, even though where I live, it seems like the weather predictions are completely wrong constantly. So I will say that that's important. And then I also want to say that the evacuations were given, and if you did not evacuate, I understand why, but we all should at least take a look as to why evacuation might be necessary at times. And like I have said on previous posts that I put on the community tab, I did have family in Baton Rouge, and they were able to leave and get over to Houston to be with other parts of my family there. So that was, a good thing in my opinion, to make sure that, they were going to be safe. Whether or not they were going to get the full impact of the storm wasn't really a difference for them in that decision. They just decided that it was the safest route. And sometimes we have to make that decision as well. Always remember that no material items are worth your life, okay? Especially when it comes to preparedness, it's something we definitely need to keep in mind. Look, I would hate to have to leave all of the stuff that I've acquired over the years and have it, be destroyed in a natural disaster. But at the same time, is there really much you can do about it if things get to that level? Probably not. And then you find yourself in a more dangerous situation than where you would have had to been. So keep those things in mind. Never allow your pride to keep you from staying alive. And that's definitely something that we all have to be in check with once in a while, because pride is a big deal when it comes to trying to maintain a certain level of preparedness. Okay, so Hurricane Ida, as of right now, still going to be causing problems for a while. And right now, the initial report that I want to share with everybody is that we're talking about 960,000 people without power. And that is definitely not good, okay? So, and there's a few things that I want to go over in this article that I found to be very useful that I think all of you can be, I guess, better informed by seeing what this information is, and then use that information to be more prepared, because it is actually interesting just kind of going through the different steps that are required to get power back onto these people and why it's such an arduous task. Okay, so obviously we're talking about power without power for weeks. Okay, that is a serious situation. That's a long time. We all know that it does not take weeks for people to start losing it without power. It doesn't take weeks at all. Usually, you could probably start seeing the effects of it within 72 hours, sometimes sooner. And of course, we're already getting reports and seeing videos of looting and stuff like that happening as well, which is obviously not what we want to see, but it's another example as to what happens during a grid down situation. So weeks without power, that's huge. Okay, now, what I want to go down to in this article that I thought was interesting and good to share with everybody is that here's the key points, okay? So any damage to transmission infrastructure must be repaired first, okay? So that's the first step. Then any trees on power lines have to be picked up before power can be restored. Downed or broken electric poles have to be reset or changed out before power can be restored. And because of the significant rainfall, flooding will make restoration efforts challenging, okay? So just keep in mind that even though they have 15,000 line workers out there trying to get power back on, all of these initial steps have to occur first before the power gets flipped back on. And that is something that we have to consider, because we're talking about any tree that might be anywhere that's on top of a power line has to be removed first. Any broken power pole has to be replaced or repaired. All these things have to happen before the power can come back on, which is why they're saying weeks without power, not just 2 days, 3 days. They're not exactly sure how long all this is going to take, because that takes or requires basically an audit of the damage that has occurred during this whole storm. So I thought this was interesting, just to give you a basic idea as to what it requires in order to get the power back on. And this is why you shouldn't just rely on the fact that the crews will be out to get that power back up at any point in time during a disaster, because you never know how long it's going to take. And there might be other situations that arise during that audit of the damage where they realize that something else more major has to be accomplished before returning power. And then that becomes even more of a complicated situation, which could take longer. So I thought this was interesting just because, we all know the steps that are required for these situations, but being able to read it and see it right in front of you sometimes reminds you as to what really goes into this whole situation, okay? And they're requesting 20,000 more line workers to assist the 15,000 that are already currently working, which means that this is a serious situation. They do not think that they're going to get power on very soon at all, okay? Another thing to consider is that it actually affected, one of the main service lines that goes through the areas that were the hardest hit. So that's another big deal, because once you hit one of those main lines, now you're talking about more extensive repair work that's required. So just wanted to bring this to your attention. And this, to me, is always going to be one of the biggest issues when it comes to having to deal with the aftermath of a storm. Yes, the damage is horrendous. Yes, people will lose their homes. Yes, flooding is going to be terrible. And yes, the infrastructure is going to be damaged. But the big issue is that when the power goes out, it opens up the door of opportunity for the people who want to take it in a malicious way. And that is exactly what the biggest problem is right now that we're already seeing, in the sense of looting and the sense of lawlessness that's going to occur there. And it becomes very dangerous very, very fast. So not only do you need to have a way to maintain power, and not only do you need to have plans to evacuate if something was to become, this dire, but you also want to make sure that if you do remain and you do have a way to maintain power, that you also are secure and you have a way to maintain some of your gray man status and not find yourself being a target for the people who are out and about looking for trouble. Okay. And that's exactly what we can expect now. And I'm sure we're going to find that a lot of additional damage will be done in the following weeks that weren't storm related. Okay. Or wasn't storm related. Okay. So let's see here. And Gray Man Prepping, see you in the chat. Thank you so much for being here. The mods, they come in, they do awesome work here, and they try to take care of me as best they can. If your comments get held back, it's either YouTube or the mods are doing what they do, and I apologize because not all of them should be held back, but it is just what it is. So I appreciate you being here, Gray Man. Thank you so much for your hard work. Alaska Prepper is here. Rudy, my man, I appreciate you being here. Always a great person to have a chat with and has great advice. And look, if you're new to prepping and you're trying to get involved with the idea of preparedness and you want to find, ways to just get started and, learn about how to develop a pantry and everything else related to it, make sure you check out Alaska Prepper because he's got awesome content, okay? All right, so let's see here. I want to get in the chat real quick before we move on to the next part of this whole equation, okay? And there is more to the story than just the power outages that could last weeks now because of this hurricane. But let's see, Prepper Nerds here. Good to see you. I did get your email. I promise I'll get back to you. Things have been extremely hectic, and I will return your email, I promise. Okay, so let's see. We got Patriot Zero here. FEMA Region 9 checking in. Excellent. It doesn't necessarily sound just like the Hunger Games, but it also does. So I want to go ahead and say that, let's see. Nick D says, Ida was not fun. I live on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, and we had a lot of flooding around the rivers. People are always out looking to loot. That's just part of it. I've been through several storms, and that is true. And generally, you hope that if there is going to be widespread looting, that it is unfortunately, allocated to the commercial areas more so than the residential, because obviously that's where things become much more dangerous. So as bad as that sounds, I mean, that is basically the mitigating factor if you're going to have to choose one or the other, okay? So want to go ahead and move on here because Hurricane Ida is going to cause more problems. And one of the big things that we need to remember and pay attention to, because with everything happening right now, everything falling apart in many ways, which is driving me nuts because it seems like it's just compounding and exponentially rolling into the snowball of crap that just keeps getting worse. And look, I don't prepare because I want things to get worse. I prepare because I foresee them possibly getting worse. And right now I'm foreseeing a lot of worse. And that's that's exactly where we are. And I think a lot of people agree with me. But don't forget about what happened in Tennessee about a week ago, okay? So Tennessee had some extreme flooding throughout the middle of the state, okay? And 22 people, or at least that's the last report that I was able to find, perished during that flooding. And it was very disastrous. It was 17 inches of rain in like a 24-hour period or something crazy like that. So real quick, I just want to go ahead and pull this up. But the remnants of Ida are going to go right through that area. And so we have to remember that those people are still cleaning up, okay? They're not even done with the disaster relief effort. And now this storm is going to come through that area and probably bring more problems with it. And these people have already been through a lot. It's been extremely devastating. So yeah, 22 people perished. Rescue crews were working hard. People were trying to find tons of missing people that are in certain neighborhoods where this affected them the most. And yes, 17 inches of rain fell in Humphreys County in less than 24 hours. That's insanity. So the flooding was devastating. It destroyed so much property and so many people's livelihoods. And now this storm, Ida's remnants are going to just go right through the middle of Tennessee once again. So please keep this in mind because yes, it's easy to see something like this happen, and then it's easy to move on to the next big thing that's going on because it's kind of just our nature at this point and the way we've been taught to move on to things when it comes to, mainstream media and everything else. But basically, these people are in for it once again, and they haven't even finished, taking care of the mess that's already been left behind. So we need to keep Tennessee in mind, because yes, they aren't going to take a direct hit from this storm the way that Louisiana did, but they are already in a state of disaster, and more of it's getting piled on top of them at this point. Okay, so the things you want to keep in mind is that this stuff happens regardless of a big prolonged, planned out disaster, right? With a hurricane, we have a little bit of time. We have the ability to kind of see where its trajectory is going to take it, and we can make plans based on the models that are put out there. But what happened in Tennessee, that's not the kind of thing that just gets projected to you, weeks in advance. So these are the things that we also have to prepare for. We're not always going to be able to get that, few days in advance evacuation notice to know that, like, okay, this is something we really need to pay attention to. And at the same time, there's just not much you can do about 17 inches of rain all in one area, all within a 24-hour period. So I wanted to keep you guys posted on that, because we're not out of the crap yet. This whole situation with Ida is going to get worse as it goes through the rest of the country. And of course, Tennessee is going to probably, have the hardest time with it after what they've just been through. So I wanted to go ahead and mention that and kind of get everybody up to speed on remembering that that was a situation that we have to watch out for, okay? So I want to go ahead, get back in the chat. It's hard to look at articles and then talk about them and then remember things and then also read the chat. So I have to kind of break real quick and be like, all right, back to people who I care about and people who are here to support and people who are here to try to be better prepared and be part of this community, because that's what really makes these live streams. It's not about, the discussions that happen afterward. It's not about the views on the live stream itself or any of that stuff. It's about what's happening in the chat and our ability to directly communicate with each other, or at least that's why I enjoy doing these. So just wanted to go ahead and mention that and explain to you why I kind of want to jump in there every so often. Okay, so South Florida DCL, good evening as well. Good to see you. Let's see. I want to get back in here. And, if you guys have anything that you're not sure about that's going on, or if you're aware of other disasters in your area that might not be getting the same coverage as some of these big name ones that are going on right now, then make sure you put it in the chat so that we can at least either be aware of it or discuss it, or just, hopefully get that information to the people who might be close by that might not even be aware that something like that is happening. Okay, so let's see. So one thing I will ask, okay, and I'm going to actually do this real quick because I have a good time with this. Whatever I just did, it didn't work. 1 second. Okay, so yes or no? That's the only thing I want to know, apparently. All right, I'm going to ask you guys, what's the most important part of your disaster preparedness kit, okay? And it's just something that I think all of us should be able to answer in one form or another. But I also want to kind of get the community's input as to what you guys think is the most important, because honestly, we might all have different opinions, and then you might have a good reason as to why your opinion is correct. And that might help all of us be better prepared, or at least change our minds. Who knows? So, we're going to be talking about emergency power, okay? We're going to be talking about potable water. Let's see here. If this thing will actually let me do what I want it to do. It doesn't want me to. Oh my gosh, it's killing me. Okay, so I swear I actually know how to use a computer. I promise you, okay? But it's a big deal that you actually have a disaster preparedness kit put together. If you don't, then you're way behind, because honestly, prepping is a lot of times moving more towards the idea of long-term survival during like a long-term SHTF situation of some sorts. But basic preparedness is something that everybody should practice. And if you're not there yet, please try to be, and then ask for advice or help if you need it, okay? So hold on a second. Emergency power, portable water, food, potable, and then let's see here. It's only going to give me so many options, so I'm trying my best to like think of what's really, important here. Let's see. Okay, only going to give me 4 options. So these are the 4 I'm going to put on here because I think that these are pretty viable and pretty standard issue when it comes to emergencies and disasters. But you guys, you tell me, what is the most important part of your disaster kit? I'm not talking about, prepping long-term SHTF and stuff like that. I get it. Somebody's going to be like, hey man, what about 9mm? I got you. But we're talking about, standard basic preparedness. So just put it in there. And then in the chat, add anything else that you think is more important than what might be on that list. But those are like the basics, I would say. And some people might say, it's something completely obscure, and that might be true for their situation, but it might not work for somebody else. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get back on track. So what else is happening? Well, obviously, there's another big natural disaster occurring right now that's definitely starting to get some headlines, and it's something that is going to be, sidelined right now due to the hurricane. But the Caldor fire in California, okay, that is becoming a big deal, and it's starting to cause a large evacuation. And we can learn from what's happening in this whole situation to kind of get an idea of how things would look during any kind of a huge SHTF scenario, okay? And really quick, I guess, law of the minimum, thank you so much. Guys, any super chats you send, I do appreciate it, but make sure you're spending money on your own preparedness first, okay? Law of the minimum says air. I bought an air quality meter to use along with my air purifiers that I can run on solar or gas generator. Okay, and that's actually not a terrible thing to have for a disaster preparedness kit, especially if you're in an area with wildfires, which is why we're about to talk about the Caldor fire, okay? So the Caldor fire, as of right now, from my understanding, is that it's burned over 277 square miles of forest, okay? And that's a huge amount. That's a huge fire, and that is starting to be extremely close to South Lake Tahoe. So go ahead and share this over here, because that's what we do. If I don't have a guest here to talk with and to interview or to kind of like get, throw ideas around with, then we're going to talk about some current events. We're going to talk about some of the things that are happening that are, sensible when it comes to preparedness. And we're also going to talk about anything relevant. And right now the Caldor fire is relevant. So it's out of control, so they say. And South Lake Tahoe is now evacuating, okay? They're talking about 22,000 people needing to evacuate. Now, here's the lesson learned here, okay? First off, when it comes to wildfires, if you get told to evacuate, you got to go, because they're not going to fight a wildfire with a garden hose. Hey, there's that one guy who did it that one time. Dude, I'm not going to, risk my family's lives on that. If my whole house burns down, that's why we have insurance. If you have fire insurance, which in some areas, especially in California, it's hard to get nowadays, but all I'm saying is that lives are more important than anything else, okay? So if you have to evacuate, you got to evacuate. Now, here's what's interesting with this story, as in, the context of this article, okay? Obviously, wildfires are extremely dangerous. Please don't play around with them. And we used to live in this area. We used to have a house up here pretty close to the Tahoe region. We were in the same county that they're talking about right here. And it was, often that we'd had to discuss the idea of possibly evacuating. So basically, one of the things that I really kind of took from this whole article is that they're talking about two different men who are, dealing with this whole situation and working in their businesses and wondering how they're going to get out, because now the traffic is gridlocked on Highway 50, hasn't moved for an hour. So you're talking about an evacuation that has to happen, but it can't, because traffic is gridlocked. Nobody can get anywhere they need to go. And for an hour, nobody's moved. So you can imagine, if this is a fast moving disaster, that gridlock is not going to be a good situation for anybody once the fire reaches it, okay? So hopefully everybody's going to get out way before that. But what I'm saying is that you can expect this during any other kind of large-scale disaster. Highways and freeways are going to be gridlocked, because this is what happens during an emergency. When everybody finally decides, which is usually last minute, to actually leave and to actually evacuate, you can't get out. You can't leave, because the traffic is packed and nobody can get where they need to go. So here's what's interesting, okay? Traffic's packed, and both these guys are talking about in the article had been putting together their evacuation bags, okay? So their evacuation bags were ready for weeks. They didn't want to have to use them, but they had them ready. So great, bug out bags, evacuation bags, whatever you want to call them. People are actually getting, aware of what you need to do in these scenarios, and that's good. But then when they finally have to take those evacuation bags and go, they can't leave. So let's see here. They tried to leave South Lake Tahoe, and the fire was just 7 miles away. Understand that 7 miles is not very far. How far does that last when something's moving even at 3 miles per hour? 2.5 hours? Not even. So keep that in mind, because we're talking about trying to get out, trying to evacuate, and trying to leave before things get dire, and people cannot. They're stuck, okay? And that's exactly what this problem is. Yes, this fire is out of control. yes, there's a lot of reasons that have led up to the reasoning behind why these fires are becoming so large and becoming so dangerous. But at the end of the day, the people who are trying to survive these situations are what matter. And those people, they're waiting on somebody else to kind of make the call, right? Somebody else is going to make the call for them. Hey, is it time to evacuate or is it not? Is it time to leave or is it not? You have to leave before everyone else, or else you might not be able to leave. And that's a big part of preparedness. So one of the things I wanted to kind of give you guys to think about when it came to this whole situation was that as a prepper, as somebody who wants to be ready for anything, you have to be perceptive. You have to reach out there with your brain and start reading in between the lines and start getting an idea as to what's happening and what's coming so that you can make decisions for you and your family on what's, more important before everyone else is just told to do what you've already decided to do. It's extremely important because if you were in that area and you knew that this Caldor fire was burning and you knew there was a chance it was going to come your way, a good idea would have been to get everything secure and ready to go and probably leave, even if it's just temporary. Get a hotel, go stay with friends or family or whatever you got to do, but take a trip, get out of town. And if nothing happens, great. But if something does happen, you're not going to be stuck in gridlock traffic wondering if you're actually going to get out or not before the flames arrive. And so that is something that I really took from this article. And of course, they go through the whole thing talking about like we had alternate routes and we're doing our best to, get the traffic jam out and we're trying to get people out of the area as fast as possible. But 22,000 people trying to get down the road all at one time is not an easy task, especially when you're talking about Highway 50, which is an extremely busy highway that goes right through Sacramento. Okay, so basically you're talking about trying to control large amounts of traffic by adding extremely large amounts of traffic right to it. And that's exactly what we can expect to see in any large-scale disaster situation. So I wanted to bring that to your attention. And of course, the fire itself is very dangerous. And of course, wildfires are a huge part of preparedness, but we all have to keep in mind the aftermath of what could happen during these scenarios if we don't take proactive actions, okay? So let's get back to the poll real quick. I want to see what you guys said. Okay, so most important for disasters, potable water. And I think that there is definitely a reason why everybody said that, because it's the thing we can live without, or we can't live without for the least amount of time, okay? Did I say that right? Who knows? I think it's time for more coffee. Oh, thank God. Okay, now I can talk again. Potable water. Why do you need it? Because you're going to die in 3 days if you don't have it. That's why, okay? So everybody agrees, and honestly, it's been, in my experience, especially living through hurricanes myself back when I lived in Florida, and also just, going through all the different anecdotal evidence of people living through these storms in the past, trying to find the potable water becomes the big issue. It's not about, staying warm or staying cold or having the lights on or being able to eat. It's always about who's got the water. It's also why you see the panic buying of bottled water at the stores right before the storms approach. That's always what happens. Bottled water disappears, people freak out about it, and then that's it. And then it's empty, and then the storm hits, okay? So potable water is huge, and it is hard to come by because in those storms especially, not just in any disaster, but in hurricanes especially, the water system gets contaminated extremely fast because of sewage and because of storm surge and everything else that occurs. And next thing you know, there's no potable water in sight for anyone. So I agree, water is extremely important. Definitely something that everybody should have. And if you don't have potable water in the sense of storage, at least have ways to treat water, okay? And of course, we saw in Texas last year during the ice storm situation that occurred, potable water was an issue there too. People were told to boil all their water, and some people didn't have power or have fuel to be able to boil water. So in those same situations, it wasn't a hurricane, it was a winter storm that caused a power outage. It caused problems when it came to the water system. And next thing you know, people have to boil their water, and they weren't able to. So good answers. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate all the participation. And I think it's just fun to give you guys something to vote on and kind of give you some ideas of, what other people's thoughts might be, okay? Because following up the potable water was emergency power, but it was basically tied with food, and then comms were last. Now, the one thing about comms, and I do want to kind of give you guys this thing to think about, just a little food for thought, okay? But comms are always suggested in emergency kits. And a lot of times it's because you want to be able to hear what's happening, especially when you're talking about like, NOAA radio weather stations and stuff like that. But you also want to be able to possibly reach out for help. Okay. Yes, having the water, having the power, and the food is very important. But if there are rescue efforts in place and you're in a situation where they're not going to find you based on circumstance, being able to reach out and try to find that help might save you more than the potable water, more than the power, and more than the food. These are just things to consider. I would choose potable water as well. You guys are right. It's the thing we can't live without, okay? But I just wanted to mention that about comms because I think comms take a back seat very often when it comes to preparedness. And I think that sometimes, just like with 911, calling for help really can be the easiest way to get out of a situation. Although I think when we're talking about like long-term SHTF grid down scenarios, there is no calling for help anymore. So I understand both sides of that, okay? So I want to go through here, talk about a little bit of what's happening in the chat, and then we're going to talk about another disaster occurring in America right now. Because like this thumbnail showed, multiple American disasters. That's what we're dealing with right now. It's happening all over the state, all over the country. And when I said state, I guess I meant state of disaster. And it just feels like things are getting really difficult. And they are. That's why we're here and why we're trying to prepare, okay? So people want to make sure that we have plenty of caffeine when it comes to disaster preparedness. I have a hard time arguing with that, okay? So, man, God, I love caffeine. It's going to be really hard if I ever don't have it. Okay, let's see. Okay. T-Rex, guns and ammo, so you have no problem getting food or water when you need it. I think we have a potential Marauder in the audience. Just throwing it out there, T-Rex. Anyway, do want to mention one thing real quick. This is just for everybody who has been here for a little bit and has things to say about many things. But this did come in the mail, and I just have to, frame it and do all the fun stuff. But if you know what it is, you know what it is. And if you don't, you can ask in the chat. But I just wanted you guys to know that it's happening. Don't worry, okay? Anyhow, let's get back to business, okay? American disaster. There's some things I want to talk about here that are going to be a little bit difficult, and not difficult in the way that they're going to be hard to say, difficult in the way that people might have certain opinions on situations that are occurring right now that are going to be incendiary in many ways. And what I want to bring to the conversation might annoy you or cause problems. Who knows? But I want to have this discussion because there's so much happening right now that there's a lot of emotion and anger, rightfully so, happening in our country, right, as a whole population. But let's not let that lead us down the wrong path, okay? Let's not let that lead us down a worst case scenario, which is where it could take us if we allow it to. So what am I talking about? All right, first and foremost, what is one of the big situations that we're dealing with right now that's going to be a big problem for us here in this country? Obviously, the Afghanistan crisis, okay? So Afghanistan is a big, big situation. It's not just about what's happening over there. It's about what's happening here, too. And one thing I want to bring to your attention, and I know many of you are aware of this already, but I do find it important to talk about and at least share, okay, is that there's a big crisis going on when it comes to the people who feel like they were left behind, okay? And I just want to share this and give you guys a heads up, okay? Congress signals concern over uptick in veteran crisis hotline calls after deadly Afghanistan withdrawal, okay? So there's a lot of people that are struggling with the events that have recently occurred, and a lot of those people have served our country in a way that we should all be appreciative of, and they might need our support and our help right now. And I don't know what it is that we can individually do in this situation, but the powers that be are saying that they're trying to allocate as many resources as they can to try to support those veterans in need right now, because there's a lot of negativity, of course, in that community based on the events that are unfolding. And it's understandable negativity, of course. So just be aware that a lot of Americans are suffering right now from this crisis at home, not just overseas, not just people who are directly involved with the crisis and situation that's occurring currently, but also the people who are here, the people who have been there before and are back home now, are really having a hard time with this whole scenario. And if it's being reported on, it's because it's actually becoming an issue. And it's something that we need to be aware of and keep in mind. And this is just an example as to what the state of our nation is kind of like right now. Things are negative. People are not feeling good about the way things are going for obvious reasons. And the people who have put a lot of blood, sweat, and tears into trying to make this country the place that it's supposed to be are feeling very left out at this point. So I wanted to bring this to your attention and to let you know that there might be somebody in your life that might need some additional support. There might be somebody in your life who, might just need somebody to talk to. So I just wanted to bring that up, okay? It says right here that 800,000 Americans have served in Afghanistan since October of 2001. That's a lot of people, okay? So there's a good possibility somebody in your life might be affected by this. And when I say that, what I mean is in the sense of a mental situation where they are having a hard time coping with the concept of what we're seeing happening over there right now. So I just wanted to bring this to your attention and at least, mention it as being another crisis, another disaster that's occurring here in this country, okay? Now, this is going to segue us into another part of the conversation that is difficult, okay? And I want to bring this to your attention because there's a lot of vitriol going on right now because of this whole situation. Understandable vitriol. And I just want you guys to be careful. What I mean by that is be careful about what we wish for, what you're asking for, and what you think the solution is. Because in these situations, it's easy to get overcome with emotion and to be gung-ho about moving forward with something that might create a worst case scenario. Okay, so I want to mention this, guys, okay? And I want to let everybody know here that, it's easy to say these things, but it's also possible that they could become worse because of what we want, okay, or what people want or what people are asking for. And I'm not necessarily saying I want this because I'm probably the person who's going to say something that might make you mad. Okay, so what am I talking about? Okay, there's been a lot of calls and a lot of, saber rattling, you could even say, when it comes to politics right now about trying to incur an impeachment, okay? And when I say that, what I mean is lots of people have come together to try to say that they want a resignation or maybe an impeachment of sorts due to this disastrous pullout of Afghanistan. And we all know that, of course, somebody should be held accountable and that this is terrible in the sense of planning and execution and that a lot of what's happening there should not even have happened. Obviously, with proper planning and proper placement, that a lot of these things probably could have been avoided. I guess it's easy to say that as an armchair quarterback, but what I'm trying to say is that it seems like people that are within the same community also agree that these things did not execute very well, okay? And one thing I want to bring up real quick is that the supposed pullout from this whole scenario is over now, right? So that's interesting because, I guess we're done. Let's see what they have to say. So they're saying that we just pulled out like an hour ago. The last C-17 flew out and that's it. We're done. Okay. Now they're talking about the idea that, we're going to engage with the Taliban and have to work with them when it comes to being some kind of a nationally recognized governing body and everything else related to it. But here's the part that really matters. Okay. How many Americans are left in Afghanistan? And they're trying to say that it's like 200. Okay. Well, first off, if there's 200 Americans that need to leave and they haven't been able to, then we left 200 Americans behind. I find that to be unreasonable. Secondly, they're also just saying that it's fewer than 200, probably closer to 100, which tells me that they don't even know and that they're not even telling us the correct numbers and that they are basically just saying we left. And we're trying to determine exactly how many. We're going through manifests and calling and texting, pre-existing lists. They're really failing in this whole situation, and they're not getting everybody out. Lots of people are being left behind. I guarantee you it's more than 100 or 200, and I guarantee you that they're not going to admit that they've done something as atrocious as this. And then what they're going to do, okay, is they're going to rely on the new governing body to, work with them on retrieving the additional Americans who are still left behind. This is out of control. I mean, this is ridiculous. And this is unacceptable, okay? But this is what's happened, and they're saying it like, we left, we're done, and that's it. And now we're going to keep working to get the rest of the people out, but we're going to do it in a way that, doesn't involve us being, on the ground, which good luck, because I don't know how that's supposed to work in a way that, doesn't seem like it would work utilizing the people that they're talking about here, okay? So, and let's see here. There was something else that really bothered me in this whole article. The U.S. is still working to get remaining American citizens out of the country, okay? How, okay? How? If we're gone, now it comes to what? Diplomacy, okay? And now they're talking about, well, we'll work with them, but only if it's in good faith, basically. And they have to meet commitments and obligations on freedom of travel, respecting the basic rights of the people, and trying to keep it from becoming a safe haven. There's no good plan in place. These people are left behind. And that's exactly what happened here, okay? So keeping that in mind, okay, and keeping in mind what's happening to even the veterans that are here in the country right now, it's easy to come out here and to say, that we want resignation, we want impeachment, we want answers, we want, accountability, all these things, okay, which we do. And there are people that need to be held accountable for the situation. But the one thing I want to talk about, okay, and this is what I think we all need to kind of take a step back and think about, okay? First and foremost, when this whole presidency began, there was a lot of conversation about the idea that we were really looking at a Kamala Harris presidency and that Biden wasn't going to be fit for office for the long term, okay? And we all knew that that was a worst case scenario. We knew that that would be a terrible situation because she is definitely more extreme to the left than even Biden, especially in the sense of things like gun control. Okay. And look, I don't generally get political on this channel. I try really hard not to. But when it comes to firearms rights, I am very political because that's one thing that I don't really budge on. And it's something that I've dealt with in the past, living in California with, Kamala Harris as the AG there. I don't want to see her thought process and her ideology in regards to the Second Amendment to be anywhere near the office of actual president, which is what would happen if Joe Biden was to actually resign because of this crisis, or if an impeachment process was to be successful. Now, I don't believe that we're actually in a situation where there's a constitutional authority for impeachment due to the idea of high crimes and misdemeanors and the idea of like a negligent or a neglectful action being able to rise up to that, label, which is, not something I'm versed in. I am not a lawyer. I do not know bird law by chance, but I do know that that's the argument that's going to be put out there and that we've seen in the past with other presidential impeachments. So the resignation and stuff like that is not something we actually want. I don't know. I mean, this is where things get really difficult because you have to keep in mind, okay? So you have a vice president that we definitely don't want to be in charge, but that's who's next if you get rid of this guy, okay? And you also have a Speaker of the House right now that we definitely don't want to be in charge, okay? But if we keep going down the line, that's just where it takes us. And after that, you have another Democrat who, might not be as incendiary as the ones who are before him, but at the same time, that's just where things would be. So are you accomplishing your goal by actually going through this process? Are you accomplishing the goal of pushing this resignation, or are we moving things into a much more dangerous territory? And I believe, and this is just my personal opinion, and this is not something I necessarily want to talk about because it's political, but what I do want to say, because this does relate to preparedness, and this can be a problem for us here in the future, is that if enough push comes to shove in the sense of trying to remove Biden from office due to the execution of this Afghanistan pullout, you're looking at a Kamala Harris presidency, which is, in my opinion, probably worse. We already know that he is under control by whoever. I don't know who he's talking about all the time when it comes to what he is or isn't allowed to do in the sense of taking questions or any of those things. But I will say that if someone like Kamala Harris was in his position, I do think that a progressive agenda, especially in the sense of firearms rights, would be pushed extremely hard. And I think things would happen much faster than what we're seeing right now. And that's just my opinion. And I think we have to keep that in mind. Now, you can leave your opinions and thoughts here in the chat, but this is where things are. This is where our country is right now. This has been a really long year already. And I wanted to bring all this information to your attention because what are we doing? What is happening? Every time you turn around, there's another disaster. There's another crisis. And there is no leadership. And that is huge because right now is when we need leadership the most. And there is nothing happening. And the biggest thing that we should keep in mind is that the accountability is non-existent as well. So not only do we not have leadership, but we don't have the ability to hold anyone accountable for any mistakes that are made. And when I say mistakes, I don't think they're all accidents. Trust me on that one. Okay, so there is no good choice, says Outdoors with James. And that is exactly my thoughts as well. We are not in a great position. But one thing I will say, this is just my opinion, is that the other two options down the line of secession are actually worse than what we have right now. Because the people who are making the decisions, especially in the sense of what's happening in Afghanistan, I doubt are actually Biden. Okay? I doubt it. So, I just want to make sure that you guys are aware of this and have an idea of where things could possibly head, okay? So, let's see here. And I just saw kind of everybody's talking about it in the chat now. Of course, I knew this was going to be a very, incendiary conversation. And I keep saying the word incendiary. Maybe I used to be a pyromaniac back in the day. I don't know. Boy Scouts will do that to you. But what I will say is that I expect there to be a lot of conversation. I expect there to be a lot of argument. I expect there to be a lot of dissent in the sense of these types of opinions. But I try to remove politics as much as I can from this channel because I don't think preparedness only applies to one group of people. Everyone can have their own different belief systems and still want to survive a disaster, right? But I also think that there are certain things that fall in a different political spectrum that we can't argue with. And, the easiest thing for me to run by you as an example in that scenario is the firearms rights aspect, because to me, that's an extremely important part of, what I care about. And I just use that as a great example as to why sometimes you do have to at least follow politics and understand where things are heading, so that way you have a better idea as to what could be coming down, the pipe. Okay. So let's see here. Back in the chat, because now after that conversation, I expect there to be some other interesting things coming through. All right. Rob Sinelli says, I'm tainted from California. If it makes you feel better, okay, and this might not. But I did grow up in Florida, and I lived there for 20 years, and I only lived in California for 10. So I think the math kind of works out to where I only have a 1-to-3 ratio of California or something like that. I don't know. You tell me, okay? So let's see. Here's something. Let's do this real quick. Hold up. I have a fun thing to share with you guys that I got in an email today, and I thought you guys might like it. Okay. I have a Samsung device, and I just wanted you to know that they're now utilizing pay programs to, provide your records with. So I just want to kind of show you guys this because that is where we're at. Can you see it? Can you see it? Can you camera? We're not going to camera. There you go. Now you can camera. Good job. So that's the email I got today, just to kind of remind you guys as to where things are heading, okay? Thought that was interesting, and I thought you guys would appreciate seeing that anyway. Thank God I can add it to my Samsung Pay. Anyhow, yes, things are crazy, okay? And, I do want you guys to be aware that, this is not a easy choice situation. We're not in an easy scenario to just make good decisions at this point. Hold anyone accountable you can and expect nothing to happen. I mean, that's where we're at in this country. And I mean, the fact that everyone's, throwing shade at Biden, who clearly doesn't make any of the decisions when it comes to what's happening militarily on the ground in places like Afghanistan. Where is the accountability from the top brass? Where is the Pentagon accountability? Where is any of that? And that, I don't know if we're going to see it ever. So keep that in mind, okay? But yes, the alternate path could end up being much worse. And I really think it would be, because somebody like Kamala Harris is going to take the ball and run, okay? So, and I did see Destiny Troll said, if Biden resigned or was impeached, a new VP wouldn't be chosen because they would need to be approved by the House or Senate. Without Harris, they no longer have a tie-breaking vote. And that might be true. But who knows? I mean, we're talking about politicians here. So they might not be able to have a tie-breaking vote, but they might, because there are a lot of people that, although you might have a 50-50 split within the Senate, that doesn't mean that everybody's on one side or the other. I don't trust anybody at this point. So yeah, I agree. At least in best case scenario, that might be the case, but we still have her as president and whoever the VP would be after the fact. And then from there, if there is no VP, then what? I guess it's still Speaker of the House next in line, right? Which is still not a good situation. All right. So enough politics for right this second, because I don't want to go down that path. I don't want to jump into that whole spectrum of the survival niche. But I did want to mention that idea because I'm seeing it all over the place where, we want answers right now. We want action. And I get that. And I totally understand that. Sometimes the solution is worse than the problem. And that is definitely what we're seeing when it comes to, I don't know, just like different sicknesses and stuff. Anyway, let's see here. So, okay. Jimmy Robbins says, when are you dropping the water storage video? I'm about 4 hours east of you in North Dakota. I'm trying to store a lot this winter. I'm not sure when I'm dropping a water storage video. In all honesty, I finally have the property and I finally have the storage capacity to be able to do water storage in a way that I've wanted to for a while. So I actually feel like I'm going to have somewhat of a learning curve and, trying to figure out the best way to do this without having issues when it comes to those negative 40-degree days. So this is some of the stuff that I'm going to be learning, and then I'll hopefully share my experiences with you after I actually have more experience with it. Does that make sense? Hopefully so, okay? A lot of my potential water situation is going to be based on the idea of using backup power in order to keep that well pump going if possible. That's what I'd like to see happen. Anyhow, SHTF prepper. Prep your heart, your mind, and your pantry. Good advice. You can't go wrong. And with the way things are going right now, obviously, that is something that we need to be doing because, gosh, I just do not feel like things are getting better. I really don't. And I don't think anybody else does either. I do want to talk about a couple things real quick because here's some things to kind of put out there for everybody, okay? One is that I just put out a buddy loadout video, right, for an SHTF loadout kit for somebody who might not be prepared. That might show up at your door, or might be somebody you take in, or who knows who it might be. Okay, look, I have friends and family that are not nearly as prepared as I am. I have friends and family who would never think to even purchase something like a plate carrier, right? So these are the things that, I think about, and it's not a bad thing to have in the sense of additional hands, okay? And yes, some people are going to say that's very dangerous. Don't give your stuff out or don't spend money on people who aren't willing to prepare. But some people aren't expendable, okay, when it comes to what your thought process is. And I just want to mention that because, a family shows up. Are you going to turn them away because they didn't bring their own plate carrier? Probably not. But are you going to hope that they can at least do something for you in the sense of providing security, and maybe giving them the tools to do so provides a sense of confidence that they might not otherwise have in order to actually be more effective in that role? That is the whole purpose behind a lot of this. And that's why I wanted to mention it, because it's not just about loadout kits and all the fun stuff that I like to talk about for prepping, because it's fun. I have a good time with it. I love all that kind of stuff. But it's about the confidence that that kind of equipment and that kind of gear can actually provide with someone who doesn't have that experience or doesn't have that level of fortitude to be able to deal with a crisis situation. So that's just one thing I wanted to mention, okay? Because a lot of people, gave me all the usual trash that I expected, which is totally fine. It's part of the deal of being on this platform. But I wanted to bring that up because I don't always, bring all those philosophies into every single video I put out because, maybe it's something I'm thinking of in my head but not putting out on a paper, or maybe it's something that doesn't occur to me until after the fact when I do get some of that feedback, which is why it's very useful to get the criticism, because it gives me more to think about. So keep that in mind, because just like that loadout kit situation, any preparedness items or any preparedness at all that you have is a confidence booster in the sense of survival, not just what it brings to the table. So food isn't just food. Food is another confidence booster to know that you can survive that much longer without having to acquire more. Water is a confidence booster in knowing that you're not going to die in 3 days because you have none. Those are all things that all come together to build somebody's ability to have the fortitude to get through a situation. And if you're going to ask somebody, hey, we got to take shifts and I need someone to watch the property, but I can't do it 24/7. So I need your help to start patrolling the property every 12 hours. But here's some gear so that if something bad happens, you have some protection. Do you think that protection is going to allow them to feel better about being put in that situation or more confident in being able to execute it well? I think so. Just in the same way that, a BMX rider wearing a helmet might be more willing to do a stunt, something risky. I don't know. God, you can tell I don't ride BMX. Do a stunt. Don't forget, guys, Invader Coffee. Veteran-owned, veteran-operated, American-owned company, excellent coffee. That's just my little pitch for the live stream because I really like their product and I like those guys and they're cool. So just wanted to put that out there. So think about this, okay? And this is something else that I want to put out there and give you guys ideas about, okay? So when it comes to maintaining your preparedness, when it comes to investing, when it comes to spending money, when it comes to all those things, okay? Keep in mind that you have to be willing to accept the idea that things might not turn out the way you think they will. You have to be willing to accept the concept that what you think before something happens will go right out the window when it actually does. These are all things we have to prepare for. So when you get very negative or very dug in about a certain concept, try your best to open up your mind and open up your ideas and perspective to the idea that the complete opposite might work, okay? Or the complete opposite might be the choice that has to be made in that time, okay? When you're talking about anything with a certainty, then to me, that limits your ability to be prepared. So always be open to a new idea. Always be open to a new concept. Just because you don't think it will work or you don't think there's a place for it doesn't mean it won't have a situation, come up where you might need that piece of gear or that intel or that skill or whatever it might be, okay? These are all things that we all have to consider on a regular basis. And I think it's important because, I prepare in a lot of different ways. And I think some of them are, borderline silly in the sense of like what could actually be expected. However, we don't know what to expect. We really don't. And it's really hard to know exactly what decision you're going to make when that decision actually has to be made. So just things I want to bring up and talk about, because there's a lot of different, chat when it comes to the preparedness community. And, one thing that you will see a lot of is people who are very set in, black and white or A and B or whatever it might be. And I think there's room in the middle sometimes because what will that, existential circumstance be that has to change plan A, plan B, and plan C over to plan D? We don't know until it actually occurs. Let's see here. There's some awesome discussion happening in the chat. I wish I could read all of it, but I can't. So let's see here. Northern Girl Hobbies, thanks for being here, by the way. Just wanted to mention that. I appreciate you helping me mod here. Creative Redundancy, great to see you. I feel like you've been at this channel for like years, so I appreciate that. And a lot of you have. And I just want to mention that like the journey from start to finish of running this channel has been incredibly rewarding, okay? I literally don't even know what I'd be doing right now if it wasn't for having this community here and having the support and having all of you to interact with. So I really appreciate it. And I am working on more and more ways for us to communicate and for us to be a larger community. But things take time and there's a lot of process involved, and I'm trying my best to work on it as much as possible. So keep that in mind. I do not forget about any of you. Let's see here. Okay. Trying to read some of these, trying to get into some of these. If you guys have things to add, or things you want to bring up, make sure you do it because I want to address them. And gosh, it's just something that brings a lot more to the table when it's not just my opinion or my thoughts. Sometimes I do rely on you guys to bring out some additional information that I haven't put out there yet. So these are all things that, come to mind, and then I decide to share them with you. Let's see here. One thing I will say is that, okay, Kim's Farm Life, Ron Rhodes has great books on end times. Good to know. Don't know Ron Rhodes myself, but maybe something to look into. Let's see. Monashi Prepping says, shout out to Northern Girl Hobby. She's a modding machine tonight. Awesome. I did think earlier that maybe I saw somebody say something about being from Saskatchewan. So, and I couldn't read the rest of it. Now I can't seem to find that comment again. But I am near Canada, obviously, being in North Dakota. So hopefully one day when all the restrictions kind of fade away and things kind of, allow us to travel again. Will that ever happen? We'll see. But I would like to visit Canada, and I would like to check out some of the surrounding area. So yes, Saskatchewan seems like a great place to at least come see what's up. So hopefully that can be something I do at some point in time here. But I literally don't know anymore because it just seems like things keep getting crazier and crazier. I mean, we literally are seeing stuff in Australia and New Zealand where you have a single case shutting down an entire country, where you have people that are being, chased and a manhunt ensues because, one person has a case. Like, it's ludicrous. Like we've jumped the shark at this point. And once you jump the shark, the show never gets better. Okay. It eventually just has to get canceled. And that's the worst metaphor I've ever had to use. And now it's terrible because I'm like, man, that's like really good and also terrifying. So great. I appreciate it. God, I love the America Cup. Okay. So, let's see. Okay. Looking at a few more. Let's see. Men of Mastery. What strange times we're living in and how lucky we are to be able to all connect from all over the world. I agree. Yes, things are definitely difficult, but we're also in a very excellent time to be able to communicate. We're in a very good time to be able to share information. We're in the information age. We're in a very good position to be able to network. Couldn't do that before in any capacity compared to what we can do now. The big downfall is that it also allows for all of the privacy concerns that are obviously not even valid anymore at this point. One thing I will say is that a big part of what I get asked about on a regular basis is, what about your OPSEC? And like, you put all your stuff out there, you show everybody, you showed everybody your guns, now everyone knows, and it's going to be a problem when the Marauders come to your house, or when the government wants to take them. They know what you have because you put it on YouTube. Look, man, they know what you have when you didn't put it on YouTube. They know what you have if they want to know what you have, okay? And the idea that your phone or that your TV or your computer has any level of security that's not breachable by anybody who really decides they want to is asinine. So keep that in mind, because real privacy doesn't exist anymore, and we allowed this to happen. And that's just part of the deal. We sacrificed privacy for convenience, and now we're in a situation where you can no longer get privacy back without going to extreme measures because we need this network to be able to function in a certain way. And that's just where we're at in this world right now. Let's see here. Prairie Man. He asked Big Boy Bear, do you like SpaghettiOs? Well, do you? Because I want to know. And honestly, like, who doesn't? So, like, I recently, somebody was talking trash about Chef Boyardee, and I just sat there nodding like, yeah. And in the back of my head, I'm thinking, but you don't like it? Oh, man. Let's see. Lucius Maximus, when we see each other on the battlefield, yell magic preppers so we know who we are. Please don't, because then, I'll have to like turn and look to see who's calling my name. And next thing you know, I'm done for. So, don't distract me if we're ever in that situation, please. You can say hi or something like after. Okay. Let's see here. Okay. Our bad. God, that was so hard not to say Brad. Okay. Now let's read this in a way that's not going to get me removed from the platform. Afghanistan ended on plan for Hunter Biden. I actually don't think I can. Our bad. You got your message out there, but this is not going to work for me, bud. I'm sorry. You got to understand, when you put anything with that kind of context involving anybody that shouldn't be involved with that kind of context, it's going to cause huge problems here. So I understand why you're trying to get out there. I understand trying to do support in the sense of a super chat, but please don't put vitriolic stuff out there for everybody to have to see, because that becomes a big problem then for being able to keep doing what I do here, which is putting out a message, talking to you guys, and interacting. So I totally understand everybody's emotion, and I totally understand trying to get messages out there in a form that, makes it easier for you, but we can't go that deep. Okay. So please be understanding as to why I had to take that initiative there. I apologize, but it is what it is. Okay. So let's see here. Let's go back in here. Stephanie Joe Roundtree, how far are you from Aberdeen, South Dakota? Well, if I give you an exact mileage, that could be a problem. Okay. But if I were to tell you, I think at this point in time, I think it would take me about 8 hours, I believe. I'm pretty sure on that. I'm not 100%. Okay. So, gosh. Okay. So just want to put that out there. Anyhow. Okay. What's next? What do we got to do here? Oh man. Okay. Let's see. Reload said, I love the buddy loadout. Check out Bowtac Tactical for high quality, low cost, lightweight class 3 plates. Thank you for letting me know about that. I appreciate it. And like I said, the buddy loadout thing, that is just literally because some people will not be as prepared as you. And it's not about not wanting them to be able to help you or to be more effective. It's just some people can't even afford to be as prepared as you. Yes, there are examples of people who will go out drinking every night and they complain about not being able to afford preparedness. I understand that. But there are some people who literally can't afford to spend money on a plate carrier when they just want to make sure their family's fed well. So I try to keep those things in mind. Okay, guys? All right. So, and let's see. Appreciate it. Mark Olson, don't forget the LDS sites on prepping and have great resources you can download. Got it. Okay. Well, I do want to mention that, LDS definitely has a lot in the sense of preparedness. And yes, you don't have to be a member in order to, acquire some of their goods. So just keep that in mind, because it's definitely another option as another outlet to get more and more stuff for your pantry and for your inventory and everything else you might need. Okay. So, and, yeah. Our bad. Like I don't even know what that means actually. So, and maybe I should, but I don't know at this point if it's a problem or not. So, but hey, at least you're understanding that I had to do what I had to do because of what, could occur otherwise. So I appreciate your understanding there. And I don't know what the rest of that means necessarily, but all right. Anyhow, let's see. I just want to mention, guys, that, network the best you can, build your community the best you can, build a mag, do what you got to do, and find ways to build a community, because it's really difficult to do everything by yourself. Okay. It's very difficult to do every single task that somebody might need to do to be completely self-reliant on their own. And if we're ever in a big time emergency situation, having somebody to watch your back can be the difference, okay? And you got to have somebody you trust, and you got to have somebody that you can count on. But at the same time, don't allow small things to be the reason why you distance yourself from people, okay? Don't allow the fact that somebody doesn't spend all of their time on preparedness to be a reason to not want them around when that time comes. It's everybody's personal decision to change their lifestyle towards something like being prepared versus towards just enjoying yourself. Those are all things that people have to decide on their own. And I don't blame anybody for not fully jumping into preparedness. It's not something for everyone. It does require a certain amount of gumption and a certain amount of motivation and energy to keep moving in the sense of trying to be prepared. So that situation means you got to be accepting of certain people sometimes. Okay. Just because your family member or your friend doesn't want to, put away a year's worth of food doesn't mean that you're not going to care about that person when things get dire, okay? And you might make those decisions at that time, and that's up to you. but don't be afraid to be a little bit compassionate to people you care about, right? I'm not talking about strangers here, but I do mean, like, if you're good friends or family, I mean, I would think that we try to help those people generally, okay? So keep those things in mind. This is important because the more we can involve with this community, the better off we're going to be. And the less marauders there will be in an emergency situation, which we all know there will be some. And if you read this chat tonight, you'll know there were some here even. Okay, so I'm going to start wrapping it up. We're past an hour, and honestly, it's been a really good conversation, but also a somewhat difficult conversation because there's so much going on right now. Make sure if you're affected by Hurricane Ida and you need help, find it, reach out for it, and get it, okay? If you're in Tennessee and you're affected by the flooding and you're worried about what's going to come your way now with the remnants of that storm, do what you have to do in the sense of receiving aid. Get out of town or find the assistance you need or reach out and ask for it, because that's what this community is for, and that is what all of the aid effort is for when it comes to these things, okay? And if you're in a situation where you need help because of the crisis happening in Afghanistan, reach out and try to find it. Do your best, and if you have somebody in your life who might be affected by it, do what you can to try to reach out to them as well and see what you can do, okay? But keep in mind, regarding this entire crisis, solution can be worse than the problem. So don't jump to something that's worse than what we already have. I just caution that. I'm not telling anybody what they should or shouldn't want. I'm just telling you that the alternate could be worse. And that's just what we have to prepare for. Okay? So I appreciate every single one of you. I really do enjoy this chat. And Swamp Eagle, you might be onto something there. I don't know. But I do want to say thank you so much. Every single one of you, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. If there's anything else you ever need from me, magicprepper.com. I have seen the emails come through, CJ. I will get back to you. Like I said in the earlier part of this chat, it's just been very hectic lately. So if there's anything else you guys need from me, find me on the website, magicprepper.com. There will be a video coming out tomorrow night about solar power for emergency situations. So that'll be out around 7:30. Make sure you check that out. And if you have anything else to leave in the chat before we shut it down, do it now so that we can get to it, okay? Welcome to My Life Says Great live stream. As always, I appreciate that because this is something I'm new to in many ways, and I'm just trying to do my best here to keep the conversation flowing and trying to put out decent information the best way I can. So thank you so much for that. And if there's anything else anybody needs, you know where to find me, but that is going to be it for Magic Prepper.